And we're live. Hello, Tom Levecchia here with the latest edition of the Armchair NBA. We have a very, very special guest today, somebody that I've been looking forward to speaking with, Chris, aka the Fat Bald Sicilian. Fat Bald Sicilian, welcome to the Armchair NBA. How you doing today?
Salute, Mob Tube. I'm doing good. Tom, how are you?
I'm well. How does it feel to be on the other side of the fence for a moment?
It's a little strange. It happens every now and then, but not too often.
Love it. All right. So we're going to start off with your backstory. So everybody who's watching, it's not going to be disrespectful in any way where I want to kind of go through his arc. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to hold off on comments. I'm going to hold off on questions. So if you can save your questions to later Q&A round later, I'm not ignoring anybody, but it's just I really want to deep dive with Fat Bald Sicilian. All right. So first, tell us about your formative years and what kind of made you you.
Well, I've told this story a lot, but uh, I was born in Queens in Flushing, and then I lived in Glendale as a kid.
Okay.
My dad was all obsessed with the mafia and the mob stuff, and he kind of raised me on it. The movies, the places he would take me to. He would drive me past the Bergen when I was little stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
When Goodfellas came out, he took me to the places that the movie was filmed, all kinds of stuff. That's what he
Robert
raised me on.
Lounge, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before in a show I did, my first book report was on Al Capone, so I kind of had the wrong idea from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Love
And
it. Love
yeah,
it.
and then like I said, we lived there till I was maybe 13, 14 years old.
Nice.
We wound up moving to Pennsylvania for a number of different reasons. And my dad left not long after we moved.
Mm.
And once he left, uh, I kind of, lost control. And I started to get involved in some of the things that I saw in these movies and in these books I read.
Yeah.
And I got myself in a lot of trouble. And eventually it led to selling drugs and using drugs and alcohol, and
Wow.
it got worse from there, really.
Yeah. Well, one of the themes, and you know this, is thanks, Joe Karate. Yeah, Joe, I'm doing a full interview, so I'm not taking a lot of questions. Obviously, I know you got us covered, so I appreciate that, Joe. Just a shout out to you. Also, I think Father Time also may have a wrench. Hello, Damien. So, all right. So, I want to unpack this a little bit, right? Because we talk a lot about fatherhood absence. It's a very big deal, right?
Yeah,
So, fortunately, you had the pleasure of having your father in your life through your early teens, and then obviously he left, and then you found different coping mechanisms, right? So,
yeah.
you got into drugs and stuff, right? But like, what was your baseline? Meaning, were you like very academic? Were you into sports? Like, kind of set it up before you kind of went the wrong path.
Um, there was not a lot. That was my interest. I was when I was younger, I was a skateboarder. I did pretty good at that. I
Oh,
would
cool.
compete. I got into the DJ thing, like mixing music, stuff
Yeah,
like that. And that was actually my dream, was the
yeah,
DJing.
nice.
Um, but I got in with the wrong crowd pretty early on in life.
Yeah.
And
Now you were pretty good with DJing, and you had a nice run. Tell us a little bit about that. Was it a career? Was it more part time? And give us some of the bigger gigs and places you played.
well, it started out as a hobby. I would make
Yeah,
mixtapes in my bedroom, stuff like that. And then, but I was pretty good at what I did. Every now
yeah.
and then I would go to a club, I would get on the turntables, I'd battle the other DJs, stuff like that. And finally, a friend of mine who was a manager at a place called Cobblestones in York City,
Cool.
he offered me a spot on, like, I think it was like Tuesday nights. They were paying me like $75 a night or something.
Hey.
Yeah, and but it blew up. It went from having 30, 40 people in the room to having 3 or 400.
Oh shit.
So, yeah, so it went up to, 4 or $500 a night. I
Yeah.
was getting paid, plus, bar tab, of course, drink all you want for free, basically. And
Nice.
I was there for about a year, and after that, it did really become a career, because I was DJing in different places like Harrisburg and Philly,
Oh wow.
Baltimore, stuff
Nice.
like that. Yeah, yeah. And I was doing I had a pretty good gig. You'll like this, Tom.
Yeah.
Um, at York College, the sorority there, the treasurer of the sorority, got a hold of me one day and said, "Hey, do you want to start doing our formals and our dances?"
Oh shit.
And I said, "Absolutely." So now I had a gig where a couple of times a year I would go to the Poconos. It would be 275 drunk sorority girls, maybe half of which actually had dates. And I would DJ for 3-4 hours. I'd have a wristband for the open bar. I would eat
Nice.
with them, and then I'd get a room for the. They'd get me a room for the weekend.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, so I did a lot of cool stuff. I opened up for some rappers,
Yeah.
things like that.
Nice.
Uh,
Now, yeah, because I remember, yeah, some of the rappers. Because I think like tell us some of the rappers or some of the people you open up with and people that maybe you hung out with. That'd be cool to hear.
well, there was a local guy named Camouflage that I did a lot of stuff for. There's still mixtapes floating around
Nice.
with my scratching and stuff I've done. But I opened up for like Bubba Sparks.
Yeah.
He was. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, I did. I'm old, man.
Yeah, yeah. Warren G.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of guys that were like American guys that were singers on American Idol that came to the clubs to sing.
That's cool.
People like that. So it was a good experience, and I got to meet a lot of people in the process.
Were you vinyl or were you CD at that point?
Oh, vinyl.
All vinyl. Nice.
Yeah.
Now, who were your idols, if you will, or who were your like mentors? I call them. Who were your idols in the DJing game that you liked back in the day?
Kid Capri.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, you remember Def Comedy Jam at the end?
Of course. Yeah.
Sorry, the dog is barking.
All right.
Kid Capri, DJ Premier,
Yeah.
and some of the radio DJs, like Red Alert and stuff.
Yeah.
I like the way they handled their shows.
Red Alert.
Yeah. Yep. So those were the main two, though. DJ
Yeah.
Premier and Kid Capri. I loved.
Yeah.
I watched and listened to everything they did.
Yeah.
And there was another DJ named Mathematics who I tried to learn a lot of the stuff he did. And I had a couple of friends that were really good at it, and they kind of walked me through some of this stuff, and I got pretty good.
Did you stay vinyl or did you migrate over to digital?
Well, it's actually a funny story. I was always vinyl. I had the Technics 1200s. They're they're like the gold standard for DJs.
Yeah.
And in 2012, I was supposed to be DJing an event for a guy, and I brought some of my equipment to his store because he owned a graphic. He did like car wraps and stuff like that. Like he would print all kind of graphic stuff for people, and I brought my equipment over to his shop. Well, little did I know he was involved in a major gift card scam. He was having people bring him gift cards. Like he had these drug addicts and stuff. They would go out into stores, Home Depot, Walmart. They'd pick something up off the shelf, go return it without a receipt, and they would get a gift card. Yeah. They would sell it to him, and then he would sell it on eBay for 75%. And he was pretty big. They said he made about $750,000 in a year. So they raided his shop. They took everything, including
your stuff was in there.
Yep. Yeah, and not long after that, Techniques basically they stopped producing, or I forget who it is that makes Techniques, but they stopped producing the Techniques 1200s. So now, in order to get them, you got to pay an arm and a leg. Yeah, so I kind of switched over. Yeah, I switched over to the digital, the controller thing, and I use Serato now until I get some more turntables.
So Serato's good. You come out of retirement now and again, host a show, host a party, maybe a little LimeWire, whatever it is, or are you retired from the game?
No. I have, and I always will. I'm always prepared to do a gig. I have the speakers, the amps, everything I need. So, but it's not, as far as my sobriety goes, doing it full time, being a club DJ like I was.
It's probably not the right environment. Yeah.
No. It's part of the reason I stopped when I had it as a business is because I was using a lot of cocaine and drinking constantly. And then I would have one of those hangovers where I said, hey, I'm done. Yeah. But then I'd go to a club. Like I remember I went to a club in Harrisburg to do like a 4th of July party.
Yeah.
And two radio DJs from Hot 92 were going to be with me. One of them walks in the booth. The first thing he does is chops up a bunch of lines. And I'm like, this, it's no good.
Wow. Now, one thing is interesting is because I don't think we're too far in age. We're kind of the first generation where hip hop became mainstream, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of caught it earlier because you were DJing. When you were DJing hip hop in certain places, were people looking at you like you had 10 heads, or was it already adopted and you fit right in?
No, I was pretty much already adopted. I mean, the it was funny though because it would usually be me battling like a black DJ in the hood
Yeah,
somewhere, and
yeah.
when I did better than them, it you
You got
know
some respect, yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
So okay, so you're DJing, you're doing stuff. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about. So you got mixed up, with drugs. So like, were you? And I think you were maybe a little bit an entrepreneur too. Were you selling more or using more? How did that transpire?
Well, that's the thing. Like I was always good enough at it that yeah, I sold way more.
Yeah,
That's what made it dangerous. Is that it wasn't even eating into profits. I could get a couple of ounces
yeah,
and sell that in a week, and it
yeah,
wasn't a big deal to do a ball every couple of days, an
yeah,
eight ball.
yeah.
So I was definitely selling more.
And you were functional, which makes it worse because you last in that game longer. Before once until you hit rock bottom, if you're functional, oh, I got this covered, or I'm just a casual user, and insert whatever excuse. So what happened to it? Like, how long was that run? And how, tell us about your life back then, and how, tell us about your life.
What as far as the DJing
Well,
or
yeah. So when you were using and selling, were you DJing? Were you functional? Like, respectfully, how was your relationship with your family? Maybe your personal relationships. I'm just trying to get context of during that, maybe in retrospect, dark period. How was it? And want to learn a little bit about that.
well, basically I was using as a in my late teens.
Okay.
17, 18, 19 were very bad.
Yeah.
I was using a lot of coke, and then I would drink myself to sleep.
Wow.
And I started. Now at this point, I was just living with my mom. I wasn't, I didn't have a family yet or anything.
Yeah.
And I was starting to experience withdrawal. It was very bad, and it
Yeah.
got to the point where if I didn't have a drink, within even a few hours, the withdrawal symptoms were unbearable.
Yeah.
And I had a girlfriend at the time. Um, she actually gave me an ultimatum at one point and said, if you don't, because she had a father who died of alcohol abuse.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so she said, "Listen, I've had it. I'm not losing another man to this. If you don't stop now, I'm leaving." So, me not knowing that I needed medical attention to detox, I
Yeah.
decided, okay, I'm going to go to a friend's house. He doesn't drink. There's no alcohol there, and I'm just going to sweat this out.
Yeah.
And within about 12 hours, I had a grand mal seizure.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I wound up in cardiac intensive care for about 12 days.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And then after that, when when I was done in the hospital, once they kind of got me back to some semblance of health, I I started to live a normal life. I was still
Yeah.
selling weed, but I
Yeah.
wasn't dealing with anything hard at all.
Yeah.
And eventually, I caught a felony case from a sale I had made 10 months before.
Oh my God.
Right around the same time, my girlfriend gets pregnant with my daughter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah. So now I had to go to jail, and I had to do my time. And when I got out, my daughter was a few months old,
Wow.
and so I was there pretty much from the beginning, which is great.
Yeah.
And
Good.
I stayed pretty much clean because we moved in as soon as I got out of jail. I got us an apartment.
Yeah.
So we were all living together. It was basically my dream come true. It was my dream
Yeah.
girl. It was
Yeah.
I had this beautiful child,
Yeah.
and we lived together. It was fantastic. And I stayed, I kept my nose clean, literally.
Literally, I was
And
gonna say, yeah.
yeah. And then, but within a couple of years, though, I started going out to this after hours club because I started selling Coke again. So I would go there and I started drinking real heavy. And then, anybody who's ever done cocaine knows that if you're drunk, a few bumps and you're brand new again, so it's really dangerous because now you could stay up all night.
Yeah.
And I got back into it, and I started the DJ career, and I was using pretty much the whole time I was doing that.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I had gotten a couple of DUIs. I destroyed within like 5-6 years. I destroyed My relationship with my daughter's mother,
Yeah.
we broke up, and I went berserk. I wound up in a psych ward.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
Now, damn. So do you think maybe, and I know Vinny talks a lot about mental health, and which I appreciate because I think in the Italian American community, mental health I think a lot of time gets suppressed, and again that's
yeah.
a whole other discussion, right? Do you think you might have had mental health challenges and you might have did drugs and exacerbated it, or do you think maybe you used drugs and it might have caused it in retrospect?
Well, that's a good question because right before I started using pretty heavily, I went through a bad period where I couldn't even get out of bed. I thought I had cancer, honestly. I was so sick, and I wound up getting diagnosed with clinical depression.
Wow.
So, they put me on at the time, I think it was Prozac,
Oh shit.
but I guess it wasn't working quickly enough, and I decided to self medicate.
Which a lot of people do, and it's common. Now, if you don't mind me asking, and I want to, hopefully you're comfortable with this, is you mentioned on your show having some challenges around your heart. Was that created that cardiac event, or is that something that runs in your family?
Well, no, both.
Ooh,
My mom had a pacemaker since she was like 28 years old. So it was in the family, but I made the mistake of adding massive amounts of cocaine to the problem. You
yeah,
know what I mean? And it took time. It didn't happen until about 2014, where I went through a whole nother phase after getting clean for a couple of years.
yeah.
And that's when that took place.
So okay, so kind of fast forward a little bit. You are finally clean, a second time, and and that point, you disengage with your daughter's mother. Did your relationship with your daughter stay intact, or how did that evolve?
The funny part is it actually got better
Okay.
because after I went through all that with my daughter's mom, we basically fought a war,
Yeah.
during that breakup. You know how that can go. Um, I wound up getting a really good job, because I got straightened out. I got clean. I
Yeah.
got a really good job. I got an apartment, and my daughter, I had split custody, so I had my daughter every other week.
Yeah.
Um, and it got great. I was doing real well with money. I was able to take us to Disney World.
Yeah.
We were doing something every weekend. We were somewhere every
Yeah.
weekend that I had her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we were as close as a father daughter could be.
God bless.
Yeah, thank you.
And then okay, so then I'm trying to piece it together and go in the continuum where you met Shanna, but is that you met her on the second stint or where there was a third stint in rehab, if you don't mind me asking? That's when you met.
Well, I had never gone to rehab, but yeah, there was a third after I got clean and I everything I just went over.
Yeah.
About 2011, 2012, I lost my job, that good job I was
Yeah.
talking
Yeah. Yeah.
about. And at first my plan was to, get another job and just keep moving the way I was, but it didn't take long for me to decide, okay, I'm running out of money. I have to
Yeah.
do something. So went right back to the street,
Mm,
bought a couple ounces of Coke. I got a pound of lavender Kush, and I started hustling again.
yeah.
And before long, I was using Coke like a maniac.
Wow.
And that lasted a couple of years. And during that time, I did some damage to my relationship with my daughter because she was seeing too much. I was a nightmare in the people's lives, the people around me.
Yeah.
Because it was always something, I was everything was chaotic. I was out of control. And I started experiencing some really bad health problems. I couldn't breathe at one point. I remember walking home and I almost collapsed because it felt like my lungs were filled with concrete.
Jesus.
And one day, I got rushed to the hospital, and it took them some time, but they did an echocardiogram. They figured out that my heart function was about 10 to 15%. Yeah, and I spent another 11 days in critical condition until I finally checked myself out.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
We're
a
lucky to be,
crazy
we're
story,
lucky to be
Tom.
alive here, man.
Oh yeah, I'm on. Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt. I'm playing with the house's money, Tom.
Borrowed time. All
Yeah.
right. So you obviously here. So you got through it. Um, and did you repair your relationship with your daughter, or is that still something unfolding?
Well, it wasn't really that bad at that point, because there is another part. Um,
Wait, there's
uh,
more.
yeah, yeah. This is a long. It's a very long, drawn out story. But
Got it.
to wrap it up quickly, basically, I again, after the heart thing, I started to kind of get my shit together again. I
Yeah.
moved to a different place, and I wasn't around the same people anymore.
Yeah.
And then I got I got a job where I met some people, and they had some weight, and I decided, I can go back to my old tricks.
Yeah.
And I started hustling again, selling coke in the place, outside of the place. I started using again,
Mm.
and one day something took place that I don't want to get into. There was a bust. I had gotten arrested. I kind of told the story before.
Yeah.
I was at a restaurant and I was surrounded as soon as I left because I had made a sale. As soon as I left, I was surrounded by the drug task force
Mm.
and the guns drawn, all that shit,
Wow.
screaming, yelling. I was taken in and I was booked again on my second felony drug sale.
Eee.
First one was in 2000. Second one was in 2016.
Wow.
After that, that's what kind of did some damage to me and my daughter's relationship. That's when she kind of was like, I think she got to the point a lot of people did, like, when is this going to stop? What are you doing
Yeah.
to yourself? But then, I went to jail. I did my time for that,
Yeah.
and started to get my shit together again until some more bad news, and I wound up. It's a long story, but I wound up living in a hotel. I
Okay.
was selling coke and crack, a lot of it from that hotel room, and I was using as well. And one day I woke up extremely sick,
Oh no.
um, sick to the point, the withdrawal was out of control. I couldn't even function. I couldn't even keep food down. And that was it that day. I called crisis intervention. I said, I need help now. And they had me in a facility later that night. And in there is where I met Shanna. She was the nurse.
Oh wow. Now, in retrospect, as I understand with addiction, sometimes it's the wrong people, so you move around. But sometimes, often, people have triggers, right? Do you
Yeah.
know what those triggers are in retrospect, or are you still trying to identify? Because you like said, "Hey, something bad happened," and then I went off, off the wagon. But it's sometimes a little deeper than that. Do you know what those triggers are in retrospect?
Well, yeah. See, my problem is I take any situation, any really bad situation, and make it really worse. Like
Well,
I,
well, that's because you're Italian.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
exactly.
Italians do.
Yeah, very emotional people and everything
Yeah,
else. I didn't. I don't handle tragedy and things like that well. And
yeah,
depending on the time in my life and what was happening, if I was alone or I was left to my own devices and I was dealing with something really tough,
yeah,
like when me and my daughter's mom broke up, and that was my partner, that was my best friend in life.
yeah,
Uh, Things like that, I just don't handle well, and I really, I that's how a lot of the time I deal with it. A lot of people are good at just handling these things and working through them.
yeah.
Back then, I would always go back to the drugs and alcohol. That was my savior almost.
Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, hopefully now, there are people watching that are going through the same affliction, right? They're watching and they know they're functional alcoholics or they're functional users or they're becoming dysfunctional, right? What do you got to say to those people that are watching, that like, it's not as simple as, oh, get help or smile more. No, what's like the real deal advice you have for somebody who's watching who, kind of knows they need help, but they're in denial?
Well, it's a tricky one because when they say you have to hit rock bottom, it's the truth.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to get you into treatment until you're ready on your own. But along with what you asked and what you asked earlier about the
Mm.
being functional, that's the problem, especially with something like cocaine. A lot of people with pill addictions, it's the same thing because it's something you can hide. Like cocaine, once you've been doing it long enough, it doesn't, you're not geeking out and stuff. You know what I mean? So you can function and live a normal life and nobody will know. There's no smell. There's nothing like that. There's nothing to detect. So that's what makes it so dangerous. It's not as like being an alcoholic as much. But to answer your question, in any of those situations, I would honestly recommend to anybody who's dealing with anything like that. Um, I hate the expression, but nip it in the bud. Like,
Yeah.
don't even let it get to the point. It's going to get out of control.
Yeah.
No matter how functional you are now, no matter how good you are at being a functional addict,
Yeah.
it's going to get out of control, and you're going to find yourself with a serious problem.
Yeah.
So, it's very short time frame. Sometimes people, places, and things, that's all you got to do is get away. So if you know that you can get away for 28 days or even 3 weeks, 21 days, do that, as soon as you can, because you don't want to let it get to the point where mine did. Because look at me now. For the rest of my life now, I have what's basically a terminal disease, a terminal illness anyway.
Wow.
I have congestive heart failure. I have a defibrillator in my chest, and I have a long criminal record. And this was all because of drugs. If drugs never entered my life, I wouldn't be dealing with any of that.
Yeah.
So my advice would be to get help before it's too late.
Good point. And the good thing is you're not a cautionary tale in the sense where, you still have your, obviously a certain level of health. You're here, which is important, and you're spreading, more importantly, a positive message, right?
I'm
So,
trying.
YouTube, like, I love your brother, but like, yeah, you don't strike me as like the normal YouTuber, right? So, what kind of YouTube? Walk me through that.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I always wanted to do the DJ thing on YouTube, but the bottom line is, um, other than just posting your videos and having a few people see them, unless you're just phenomenal, one of the greats, you're not going to get anywhere on YouTube with that. And after I left the rehab I was in, and I just want to clarify because of the trolls and shit. When I met Shanna, nothing happened in rehab. Okay, people like to say this. I was out of rehab for a while before I ever contacted her. I'm sorry, I just had to throw that in. But
Hmm.
once I got out of that rehab, I would go back on Sundays, and they would invite me. I'd have dinner with the new clients, and then I would go to an AA meeting and I would speak, and I would tell a much longer, much more detailed version of what I just told you. And as you can imagine, a lot of addicts that were in those meetings were kind of inspired by it, and they were like, because at that time, I had a few months clean, and they were like, wow, if you can do it, we can do it. It's really inspirational. So I started telling Shanna, listen, I want to do a channel where I can tell my stories,
Yeah.
where I could tell my story of addiction and I can help people. And I never really got around to it. And then this whole thing happened with Jimmy Calandra and John A. Light. And I've always been a mob
Yeah.
sort of a mob historian. I'm no expert,
Yeah.
but I know a good bit. And I thought, I know all about this A Light, and I know Jimmy's whole story. I studied the Bath Avenue crew. I thought maybe this is my in. Maybe I could jump in and tell people my opinion,
Yeah.
and maybe it'll get me somewhere. Who knows?
Yeah.
So little did I know, I picked a stupid name. I made my first video, and it really worked. But it gave me the opportunity to do what I wanted to do. I throw DJ videos up from time to time,
Yeah.
and I do the addiction and recovery stuff, and
Yeah.
I know for a fact that has helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like all my YouTube dreams came true on one channel.
That's amazing because again you had like kind of a game plan and you just screw it, let me do it, and then you're obviously doing well. Otherwise, I was really interested in speaking with you, and I'm really excited, still excited as we speak. My question though is, now you were around, like obviously people, whether you want a distro and a coke or and different sort of drugs. Was LCN involved in any of the supply chain that you were involved with, or those guys weren't really involved in?
Listen, let's be honest. There's a good chance they're involved in all of it. You know what I mean? All the supply chains, but not that I know of. I'd be lying if I said yes. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, for a mob channel, I don't have those kind of stories.
Yeah.
I dealt with street guys.
Yeah.
And I was, low level. I
Yeah.
dealt with mid level guys. Obviously, they dealt with the higher level guys.
Yeah.
So no, there was none of that as far as I know.
Now, when you got into the mob genre, because I think, if I remember correctly, you started, I think, or started the other show, and then just give me one second. I'm
Go
live.
ahead.
Sorry about that. Just that's why you're live. Anything can happen. So you got into Mob 2, but what's interesting is, again, you caught a feud at the time with Clay and Janae Light. But then one thing I really like about your show is, again, you have you're not just Mob 2, but you have a live, or you have addiction recovery and an occasional DJing. But you also got roped into a lot of crappy situations. So what's your learning from some of that? And then what's kind of the plan for the future for your channel?
Well, listen, every time I get myself involved in any of that, every time I plan on doing a regular show and then I mention one of these guys' names, I wind up eventually regretting it. See, I still have too much, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience understand. I still have that street guy bullshit in me where I have to react. I have to, I can't back down. If somebody, disrespects me, I have to respond. And it's a dumb way to be, especially in this, because I'm fully aware that I could be blowing opportunities. There could be people watching this stuff that are important people. So I never meant to get roped into all that bullshit, and I honestly wish I never would have. But as far as my plans for the future, none of that is included in my plans. I don't really want any part of that. I like things like yesterday, talking about Alpo, having RJ Roger on, doing stuff like that. When you come on, Brooklyn guy, and we talk mob stuff, that's what I want. So I'm going to do my best, but, it's obvious that, I still have that person in me that every now and then lashes out. So, it's just like addiction. Never say never, you take it day by day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You never know what somebody's going to do that might trigger me at some point. But
now we both know, and many of us know who watch, we all know what real and hard work is. So I don't want to minimize, real and hard work, but it is difficult having a channel. It's not easy. And the fact that I think you do mostly lives, right? And, I highly doubt you have a lot of time for a content calendar and production. And you're probably one person show, right? You have to book your guests and come up with ideas, and you got to always stay on, and you're probably exhausted after being on for 2 hours. So how do you, now that you have a few shows under your belt, what's your content strategy and how do you come up with ideas?
Well, I always say I'm going to slow down a little bit and not do as many shows because I'd like to do a more scheduled type of thing. But I don't know how that's going to go. Right now, I'm taking it day by day. But as far as coming up with the ideas, I'll think about stuff all day. I'll think about a mob topic because I don't like to just come out. There's a million guys that'll come out, pick a mob guy and tell his story.
Yeah,
I want to do something different, so I'll try to pick something more obscure, like Joey Calco in The Night of the Calzone, that type of story, or like when I played the Mafia wiretaps, just different stuff.
Cool. That was cool.
Yeah, different stuff that's mob related, but not anything specific. Just the general conversation about the mob I love. Yeah. But my favorite thing, hands down, and this is what I'd like for the future, and I do bust my ass booking these guests, is those interviews.
Yeah.
Interviewing people like Patrick Borriello, Robert Funaro, Joseph D'Onofrio, even Jimmy Calandra. That to me is that's a dream come true. I never thought I'd be able to do it. I never thought I'd be good at it. And I got such good feedback on those interviews that's honestly my dream for the channel now. I want to get to the point where I have guests at least weekly. Yeah. And I could do more of that type of stuff because listen, how old are you, Tom? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm going to be 46 soon.
Oh, all right. So you're only a few years. I'm 42.
Yeah, not bad.
So we grew up on like a Bronx Tale and Goodfellas. And so for me to interview some of these, Donnie Brown, for me to interview some of these guys, it's a dream come true. It's fascinating.
Well, so, what am I? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
What are my learnings? And exactly that, right? Nostalgia is big, and I think Fernari, I saw briefly D'Onofrio. I was actually at a Carmine's in Little Italy, in Midtown Manhattan, and he was a waiter at the time. This was in the 90s. So I'm glad he's back in show business and doing stuff. And I was always a big fan of his. But we grew up on this stuff, right? So I love these obscure guests, and you probably are realizing it now when you have a podcast, right? I would if I reach out to a billionaire, to be like $15,000 an hour consulting, but you ask to be on a podcast, they'll give you an hour of your time. It's crazy. So this, you probably are shocked almost at the people that say yes and say yes quickly. So podcasts, are not to be underestimated. You know what I mean?
No, they're not. It's. I'll tell you what. Like I've gotten certain people. Like I reached out to like uh, Furio from The Sopranos.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Never heard back. People like
yeah,
that are a little bigger.
yeah, yeah.
Um, I reach out to whoever pops in my head. Like, hey,
Yep,
he'd be a great interview. But then people like Robert Funaro, who had a huge part in The Sopranos.
yep,
He was Eugene Pontecorvo.
yeah,
I literally, I was watching Members Only one night and I thought about it and I said, it would be amazing to get him. I found him on Instagram. I
yeah.
sent him a message and it took 5 minutes. He got back and he was like, yeah, I'll do it.
Nice.
So it's mind blowing, man. And like some other people were harder. Lilo
Yeah,
Brancato
yeah,
took a little bit more,
yeah.
but then some of them I got help with. Like Patrick Borriello helped me with Joseph D'Onofrio, Louis
That's cool.
Venaria.
Both were cool. Yeah,
Yeah, and Jimmy Calandra, for example, one of my
yeah,
biggest interviews ever. He
yeah,
he had promised it to me early on, and I just
yeah.
gave him time until he was ready. And he called me one week and said, "Let's do it next week."
Love it.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not afraid to have anybody on that I want to have on. I believe everybody has a story to tell. I think it should be done in a respectful manner. And like I said, you and I, get along. You welcome me on your show. You're welcome always to come on my show. But I was getting a little crap for having you. Like I kind of announced it. I think it was on Friday, whatever it was. I'm like, hey, I could have FBS on, and listen, I could have Jesus on, and somebody's got to say something. Like I literally like get roasted for anything that I do. Right? If I go left, you should have went right, right? But
Of
I got a little
course.
shit for having you on. Why do you think? Why do you think I got some shit for having you on?
Listen, I guess the only answer is a lot of people don't like me, Tom. I don't know. I mean, we all know there's some
Yeah,
jealousy there that's a
yeah,
factor, but some people don't like other people for whatever
mm,
reason. Maybe it's my personality. I'm hearing a lot that people think I'm getting a big ego, which I'm not. But and then some people, let's face it, it's this whole thing has become politics.
yeah,
So if you like Tony Pizza, you have to hate me. If
yeah,
you like Lee Cole, you have to hate me. And
yeah,
your whole job is to just trash me all day, every day. So there's a lot to it, man. It's not.
yeah. Now, so here's the thing, though. But you also strike me as kind of like a mild mannered guy as well, a little more laid back. You're in your 40s, and like, what do you say to those people that what, like, are maybe painting you with a broad brush and should give you a chance? What do you say to those people that maybe what, like, keep an open mind? What do you say to those folks?
Well, I mean, as far as giving me a chance, I think a lot of the problem is a lot of the subscribers and stuff, they started watching when all the bullshit happened.
Yeah,
I think if people went back and listened to me from the beginning, my story, understood just how humble I am in this whole thing, and got the idea, which is the right one, that I'm just uh, trying to do my best every day, and
yeah,
I'm still new.
yeah,
I'm learning right along with a lot of people.
yeah.
So that's the best thing I could say to that. Is rather than worrying about what I said about this guy or what I said about that guy, judge me by my character and not by a week's worth of actions or something.
Yeah,
But
good
that's
point.
all I could say. Other than that, if you just like me, or don't like me because you just don't like me, well, what can I say? More power to you.
What's your biggest regret to date? Like maybe in retrospect, you made a maneuver or a tactic or did something that what you're like, oh fuck, like I really wish I didn't do that, and you had to kind of fix it.
What, on YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube, real life, whatever works best.
Well, in life, there's so many, but there's one in particular that I don't get too detailed about. But it's caused a great sadness in my life. It's honestly the one thing that's on my mind 24 hours a day. It's involved, that bust I talked about at that restaurant.
Yeah,
Um, it's part of that, and it's something that I have to live with. But it's just because it hurt someone else that was in my life. You know what I mean? And in life, that would be my biggest regret. Um, in On YouTube, it's just getting involved in all the nonsense, knowing better than to give some of these guys life by even speaking their name.
now the fact that you got on YouTube and you're doing a lot more productive stuff on the positive side of things, any people that maybe previous in your life that kind of fell off, like, did you get reintroduced to any other people, reconnect with any other people? Did you meet any new people? Like, what has it done for you in terms of outside of the YouTube screen?
I'm sorry, what has what done
No,
for
but
me?
so you got your show and you're kind of cooking, right? Have
Yeah.
you, like, did people maybe learn about it and then that you reconnected with some old friends or made some positive connections, or did you make any new friends? And if so, like, are they other YouTubers, or give us kind of the background there?
Well, it's funny because it actually, like what I said, one of the things I regret, and a person that I did hurt with my, stupid ass actions,
Yeah,
um, it actually has improved that relationship, and I'm, you know, a lot.
yeah,
It gives us something else to talk about and bond over. Um, as far as that, though, I don't. There's not many people in my life that know I do this. I mean, none of my old friends know.
yeah,
Nobody from the town I live in really knows, just because I don't talk to anyone anymore. Eventually they will, but
yeah,
only a few people in my family and stuff know I do this. But as far as people I've met because of YouTube, in person, I haven't met any yet. But the relationships I've built with some of these actors, some of the other people that I've had on my show, and
yeah.
even other hosts, that's invaluable to me. It means the world. Like, we've helped each other out, and sometimes it seems like a virtual friendship can be better than a physical one in person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's what's weird is we put together a little fun clip called the Four Horsemen. It's Bay 8th. His name is Joe. Obviously, Vinny Bracco, who which I really think you elevated because I kind of knew of Vinny. I want to say you might have turned me on to him. So thank you for making that friendship. And then my boy Jason Venturelli, who's sponsored the show, JC Capital, and we came together. We have some cool stuff going on. So it's funny because like you'll have like what I was flying in from Atlanta. I was there for work, and one of them offered to pick me up from the two of them offered to pick me up from the airport. And like my buddies that I love them to death from like 40 years, like probably wouldn't. I got the kids, I'm tired, I'm old. Meanwhile, they're like, oh, like they were offering. Now I could expense it through work. So I'm like, I would feel bad taking somebody away from their family for an hour to pick me up. But especially when I get it covered by my job, by my client. But nevertheless, like you build these camaraderies and you build these friendships, and they're pretty valuable. So listen, we're gonna okay, now I'm gonna open up the questions.
Okay.
Anybody who knows, this channel and knows me, it's about positivity, criticism, okay, but this is not really the time or place for it. It's just legitimate questions for FBS. Going to spend a few minutes on that before we wrap up. I typically do the interviews. I don't do them live, so I appreciate I think for the most part, you guys have been respectful. Thank you for the moderators. I try not to do lives with interviews because I want to deep dive, kind of like we did with FBS today. I think I let him off the hook a little bit, but he's a good guy, so that's okay. No, I'm just messing with you. So yeah, feel
You can
free.
ask anything.
Exactly. And then you seem like an open book. And I have a question for you.
Okay.
It's not easy to open up to people. You were guys in our 40s, we're Italian guys, we weren't brought up to be Mr. Expressive, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that you're able to open up about your life and some challenges on YouTube, like, how do you do it?
Well, trust me, it's difficult sometimes. Especially when I've spoken about specific people in my life
Yeah.
that I love more than anything. But I guess it's like this. I always had this dream of writing a book because I was always told with my life story, I could write a bestseller,
Yeah.
and it'll most likely never happen. But I always said that if I did something like that, I would tell my full story. I would hold nothing back. I would tell no lies. I
Yeah.
wouldn't add anything. I wouldn't take anything away. So to me, this isn't in book form, but it's my way of telling my story and getting some things off my chest. So it only works for me if I'm being completely honest
Good
and
point.
I'm being completely open. And that's what I love, because I think the reason I have so many loyal subscribers is because they know that that's what they can expect from me.
Interesting. Ever been to Boston? Know anything about the mob up there and the Big Dig or the new Green Line extension project? I don't know. I guess it's for you.
I know a
Yeah.
little bit about the mob in Boston, and of
Yeah.
course I know about the Whitey Bulger story and
Yeah.
the Winter Hill Gang, stuff like that, but not too much. No, and I don't know anything about the Big Dig or the new Green Line extension project.
Yeah. I just saw a question mark, so let me pull it up. Another question I have is your wife Shanna started a channel. Hopefully, I can have her on as well someday. How has and little secret, YouTube takes up a lot of people's time,
Yeah,
not just the filming, but the ideas.
Yeah.
the emails, the comments, the held for review, and then now she started her channel. How is the dynamic? How are you guys managing the dynamic? Although it's fun and it's great and it's exciting, it's not easy, right? How do you guys manage the dynamic of having a show each?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm actually glad you asked that question
Yeah.
because to stick with what I said about being completely honest and open, it hasn't been easy. I'll be
Yeah.
the first to say that it hasn't been great for me and Shanna as far as our marriage. I have definitely been distracted in a major way by everything that goes on. Like you said, even answering comments, catching up on people's emails. This shit takes hours. You know what I mean? People don't understand
Yeah.
sometimes. It might take you a week to answer an email because you just don't have time.
Yeah.
So the stress it's put me under, and obviously the bullshit that goes on behind the scenes, people trashing you, people trashing her, stuff like that. It absolutely hasn't been easy, and I'm trying to get better focused on my regular life and not
Yeah.
so much YouTube.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's taken a lot out of me without a doubt, and Shanna,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Now, this is actually a legitimate question, I believe. Like you, obviously in the streets, with guys that you roll with the Italians, blacks, Puerto Rican. Like, what kind of guys were you rolling with?
Black, Puerto Rican, and Mexican.
Interesting. And it's interesting when you're in the street and you're Italian and you're dealing with other ethnicities. They like assume you're in the mob or like almost like, oh, you're Donnie. Yeah. Like, does that weigh in at all?
Well, yeah, I mean they just the fact. It's funny, Tom. You know how it is when you're an Italian guy.
Yeah.
You got an Italian last name, especially if you're from New York.
Yep.
People always assume things like that, and guys like that in the hood and stuff that generally wouldn't accept a white boy. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? They're
Yeah.
definitely quicker to latch on to you. A lot of black guys don't even see Italians as white people. It's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, they kind of see you as not you're not lily white to them. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So they expect you to be more of a street guy. They expect you to be more loyal. The Italian thing, they expect you not to flip so quickly and become a rat.
Yeah.
So it helps if you're trying to get involved with that kind of street life.
This is a good question. Do you like maybe have a mentor, or is anybody like that you read, or anybody that's mentored you in regards to improving your show when you're looking to improve it, or do you just kind of do it on your own on the fly?
Um, no, I mean, I have a couple of people I consult with from time to time. They give me advice, other YouTubers, but no, this whole thing is just I'm just winging it, Tom.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really am. I have no grand plan. I honestly don't. I'm riding it till the wheels fall off.
Let me ask you this though, because one thing I give you a lot of credit for, because as the armchair MBA, we always talk about the business aspect. You kind of got it down. I'll tell you why. A lot of people fall in the trap of they do a video, they upload it, they get 4,000 views, and you make $20, right? Now, I don't count anybody's money. I don't want people to count my money. And I love the fact that you understand that you do a live show, you get some super chats, you have the Cash App. And the truth of the matter is, like, I watch you. You don't ask for money, but it's okay that people send you, because when you're a creator, when you provide value, you should get rewarded. So I like the fact that you got the business model down quickly,
Yeah.
and I respect you for that. Is it just something that worked out, or did you know the game before going in?
No, listen, I never even planned on being monetized. Once I did, I started learning from there. And
Yeah.
but no, it was never a plan. Everything fell into place. And the only thing about my analytics that I look at
Yeah.
is the bottom line, basically, is
Revenue. Yeah. Yeah.
what I'm how it is, Tom. We get paid by the month. So it's
Yeah.
like, how much did I bring in this month? And I'll tell you what, the way I am is as soon as that starts going down instead of up monthly,
Yeah.
then I know
Yeah.
I have to change everything.
Well, that's the thing I don't get, right? It's like, for me, right? And listen, there is no wrong way for monetization. And whether we like it or not, the more resources you have for your show, the better. I want to get my stuff edited. There's a lot more that I want to do, that I want to prove upon. And I'm sure you do too, right? And I was lucky to get some sponsors, so I don't do as much of that stuff, but the super chats don't hurt, or I even set it for a Cash App. But the cool thing about it is, it's a way to really, get revenue for the show, to help the show, right? You have a good mic, you buy the chair, like you're able to get a background. So like I see the benefit of that, right? Why do you think there's hate when people like you try to monetize your show, right? Which is business, right? That's like you don't want to be here. Don't get me wrong, you want to put on a great show and great content and get rewarded for that great content. But why do you think some people get on you and me and other providers for God forbid trying to make a few bucks doing this?
Because they can't or they won't.
Yeah,
They just,
yeah,
you know what I mean? The
yeah.
honest to God truth is there's nobody out there, Tom, who wouldn't be doing what we're doing if they could.
Agreed.
And all these guys that talk about super chats and stuff, let me see one of them create a show, get monetized, and then turn down super chats. You'd
Agreed.
have to be a fucking moron, and they wouldn't do it. So that's what it comes down to. It comes
Yeah,
down to people see it as you got to understand. A lot of people don't think because of who we are or whatever else it is, they
yeah,
don't feel that we deserve this, the attention, the channel, the outlet, the platform, and so to see us get paid for it
yep,
pisses them off to no end.
yeah,
And that's all it's about. They know damn well that they would that it's deserved and that
yeah.
you're earning money based on work that that you're doing. But
Correct.
they're not doing it themselves, and a lot of people are just very jealous.
If you were to scale it up, I'm going to wrap up soon. But if you had a little background music,
I
um,
gotcha.
so again, that's what just like you, my show's real. It is what it is. Um, if you could scale it up a little bit and go full time, is that something you would do, or you're kind of happy where you are right now?
No, I'd love to make it my whole life. Like I was out of work for 2 months. I got a job again recently.
Yeah,
So I'm working during the days now, Monday through Friday. And I don't care. I've always worked, so it doesn't bother
yeah,
me. But I would absolutely love to get to this to the point where, yeah, it's full time, where I could work an entire day on one show for that night.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And do a nightly show. That would be my goal. That is my goal.
yeah. And what's so again before we conclude, what's I want to know, I want a little more. What's the future hold? You're going to continue to do your lives. Gunsmoke's going to make fun of everybody. You're going to get an occasional tussle. But yeah, I mean, guests lined up, or like, what's next for the show?
Honestly, I've been working for about 2 weeks now on some new guests. I'm pretty close with a couple. I think I'm going to get them.
Nice.
Um, but other than that, I'm gonna focus more on stuff like when I do, you'll see I'll do 4 or 5 days of nothing but mob stuff.
Yeah,
Or like yesterday, the story broke obviously about Alpo. That was important news,
yeah,
especially from the world I come from.
yeah,
Because he's a famous rat in the drug dealing world.
yeah,
So I want to focus more on that stuff. I love doing the shows every now and then where I just chat with people.
yeah.
People love it. So I love doing them. But yeah, I'm kind of OCD. So I want things to be organized. I want them to be in some sort of order,
Yeah.
and that's what I would like to do. I'd like to work as much as possible on good content.
Well, before I wrap up, you brought it up, so I do want to ask this question. You look at Alpo, and they'll find out it could be 20-year-old kids, it could be revenge shit, it could be a whole bunch of things, right? And the whole kind of mantra about the mob. Think about it, right? And guess you know better than me, but I would guess his organization at peak might have been what 50 guys, probably no organizational structure, no familiar structure. So like we're not talking about a good, strong, sustainable organization, right? But the mob's been around that whole time. The Gaminas alone, I understand, could have between 500 to 700 associates, right? But you hear mob guys are not going to hit anybody, too many cameras, too many this, too many that, too many that. But a lesser and stronger organization was able to hit somebody who was in WITSEC. Why is the mob, once in a while pulling that trigger, in your opinion?
I don't know. We spoke about this yesterday. I spoke about
Yeah.
it on my own and with RJ. I hate to say it this way, but they have a major problem. They've had it for decades now, and if they don't make an example out of somebody, that problem is not going to get better. And I hear the same things you do: too many
Yeah.
cameras, all that shit. But the bottom line is, some guys in the hood were able to kill a famous rat who is currently in witness protection.
Yeah.
It is kind of fascinating, isn't it? And my question is, how does it make those larger organizations look if they're not doing the same thing?
Agreed. And then if you remove the fear, you become pretty much useless. Do you have any plans on branching off from strictly mob shows at the time, or having more in-depth shows like going Alpo and other notorious guys like Nicky Barnes, Lucas, and Big Meech?
I want to do stuff on all those guys, but yes, as far as branching off, I was thinking about it today. I have another fascination I have is with famous missing persons cases. Like,
Oh
I'm
wow.
talking about people that have been missing for 10, 20 years, vanished without a trace. I study a lot of those cases. I could do shows on them every day right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to lie, business wise, it's brilliant because any of those channels, they have fucking 200,000 subscribers just giving
Yep.
their opinion on what happened to somebody who's missing.
Yep.
So that is my next move as far as a different type of content. That I will be doing that soon. At least one case specifically.
Well, I agree with you, and I know that you probably struggle with this as well. We both kind of are growing up in the mob genre, and it's very limited. I'm not knocking anybody. I appreciate every viewer here, but like there's other channels of like people doing with a slime and have like 2 million subs and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm not a slime guy, and I want to stay true to the roots, but once in a while you want to pivot and expand. So I do think if you do like OC and stuff, we have a really smart audience. I really think they'll appreciate that kind of stuff, and I think that'll go well. So, Chris, FBS, we know most people know you. Hopefully, most people love you. For those that don't love you, hopefully, this interview helped, help make you more human in their eyes. But how can we find you for those that are, want to follow you and sub to your show?
Um, Obviously, you could subscribe to Fat Bald Sicilian. Please do that. And then on Twitter, same thing. Twitter and Instagram is Fat Bald Sicilian. So if you could follow me on there, that would be great. I'm new to both of those platforms, so I'd like to build up a following there.
Awesome. Listen, everybody, thank you for the super chats. Thank you for the comments. Like I said, I don't want you to think I was ignoring a lot of the comments. It's just that my interviews, I do get a little intense and I want to focus in on it. And they also have ADD. So thank you for the questions. And again, thank you, Fat Bald Sicilian, for being on the
Absolutely.
Armchair MBA, brother.
Thank you for having me on.
My pleasure.